Okay, good morning everybody. My name's John Kirby. I'm Director of BIM and Asset Information at High Speed 2. And I'm going to spend the next 20 or so minutes talking about, mainly the strategic implementation of BIM, building information modeling, and the use of asset information on this project. But I'm also going to spend a bit of time giving a bit of background on what HS2 is, what we're here to do, and try and articulate the scale and the complexity of the project as well. So I'm sure most of you know what HS2 is, but for those of you who don't, I'll just go into it in a bit more detail. It's the proposed high-speed rail line from London to Birmingham for phase 1, and then Birmingham to Manchester and Leeds as part of phase 2. So its intention is to provide a strategic transformation to the UK, so looking at improving journey times, improving regeneration opportunities, and most importantly of all, increasing capacity on what will be a full rail network. So to try and, as I say, give a bit of appreciation to the scale of what we're trying to do, we put together this video, which is basically all of the engineering design data that went into the hybrid bill for phase 1. So apologies if it starts to go quickly. I think we had to increase it to about 3,000 miles an hour to fit it into to roughly 2 minutes. So apologies if you suffer from motion sickness. But it does take us on a journey from Birmingham, where we started, all the way down to London, so along the 140 miles of new rail infrastructure. So we go through roughly along the way 50% in cuttings and tunnels. 56.5 miles of that is partially or totally hidden from view. We'll go over and under around 200 bridges, so there's about 50-50 split between over and under bridges along the way. We go across just over 10 miles of viaduct. And we've got 4 key stations along the route. So obviously Birmingham Interchange is one of those stations. We've got a new station at Birmingham Curzon Street, a big station at Old Oak Common to provide connectivity into the London transport network, and particularly connectivity to Crossrail. And then we've got a redeveloped station at Euston, which will provide the terminus for the high-speed rail. So as you can see, we're just coming into Euston now in terms of the redevelopment that's going to go on there. So phase 2, slightly longer than Scotland. So London has got Crossrail. We want to bring something very similar to the north. In terms of spend, HS2 will be the largest infrastructure project in Europe, and it's got a significant impact on jobs within and outside of our supply chain. So there will be huge opportunities for British companies to benefit from HS2. So outside of the supply chain, we estimate there will be about 50,000 jobs in HS2's peak during construction. And then through associated development and regeneration opportunities within and around the stations, we think there will be around about another 50,000 jobs, so 100,000 jobs in total from HS2. But all of this isn't going to happen overnight, so the programme looks like this. We deposited the hybrid bill for phase 1 back in November 2013, and we're currently going through a fairly long process of taking it through Parliament, going through select committee and hearing petitions on that hybrid bill and the design that was put forward. Early works procurement is just kicking off now, and we will very soon be starting our ECI main civils construction procurement. So that's the big bit of work to do that. Then we'll be phasing in our rolling stock procurement and our rail systems procurement as we move through the programme, looking at starting testing and commissioning in 2024, and then entry to service in 2026. But for phase 1, this is all reliant on the fact that we get royal assent at the end of 2016, which is the culmination of our petitioning process. So we believe that HS2 is a massive opportunity for this country and for British companies, as I mentioned before. But we believe that we have to change the way that we deliver rail projects traditionally to be able to deliver HS2 due to its size and its complexity. And to do that, and you might have seen these pictures before, but HS2 quite like these little sort of cartoon depictions of what our vision is. But to do that, we need to start with with the passenger. So we need to make sure that we are providing the best service for the people that are going to be using our railway. So, and you can't really see it very clearly, but what this tries to depict is the journey that a passenger takes from their home all the way through to their destination, and how they get there as most efficiently as possible and in the most comfortable way. So what will it be like for a passenger on HS2? How will they buy tickets with the fewest obstacles in place to do so and the most flexibility? What will the train station experience be like? So how can we make sure that it's as easy as possible for people to get from one place to the other? And how can we put in place the best environment for people to travel through? And what will it be like on the train? How can we make sure that we are making provisions for all the passenger types, from business users to personal use? Moving on from the passenger experience is about operations and maintenance. So how can we make sure that we are designing for our assets that are going to be operated and maintained? So I think there are two key themes here, because you definitely can't see this. There are two key themes. One is that we need to think about designing operations and maintenance together. So making sure we are having one plan for both. There's always a sort of a tradition where operations and maintenance are dealt with separately, and there can be sort of conflicting priorities when you consider it that way. So we're bringing them both in together, and that's how we're designing HS2. And the second theme is really about the whole system approach to operations and maintenance. So not treating things in silos, not sectioning off the route, but thinking it as a system and making sure that we develop our design with the system in mind, and making sure that we have got an integrated approach. I think this is an area where there are big innovations that can really help us in terms of operations and maintenance. And I know that I think that Rail are coming on a bit later to speak about their digital railway and some of the things they're doing. But things like satellite technology, how can we really exploit that to operate and maintain the railway? Use of drones, how can we try and get some of the safety aspects out of inspecting a railway through the use of sort of unmanned vehicles? And then the whole aspect of our assets, how can we get as few asset types as possible so that we know that we can maintain them as quickly and as efficiently as possible? So looking at modularisation and things like that. And asset information, we really need to be on top of all of our asset information right now as we start designing and building a railway. So we need to know what we've got, where we've got it, how many we've got of it, where it came from, and that's a really critical bit of information that we need to know that will help us operate and maintain this railway in the future. So underpinning it all is the information that we are creating as a client, but mainly our supply chain is creating for encompassing vision and strategy for what BIM is to HS2. As you can see, this picture tries to take us on a journey all the way through from where we are at the moment in the select committee and hybrid build phase, all the way up to decommissioning when the project's completed. And it's a long journey, and this picture was the thing with BIM is it's about engagement with staff, and it's a new thing, so we need to make sure that everyone knows how it's impacted, how they're impacted by it, what benefits it brings them, and how they need to change the way they work to develop the information in a way that it can be used all the way through the life cycle of the project. And that's what we try to do with the creation of this picture, is engage the whole organisation in its development so that we get adoption right from the start. So we always think about designing our physical assets for the longevity of the project, or for as long as they possibly can be there for. But we don't very often think about our digital legacy. So how can we make sure that our data survives the test of time and that it can be used through operations and maintenance? We also like to think about what we need to do to change. So in 10 years' time, we don't want to be sitting here thinking, oh, I wish we really thought about our data, and I wish we really implemented BIM now. I wish we had the right contracts in place to help our supply chain work the way we wanted them to work. We need to do it now. Now is the right time. If we miss this opportunity as a client, then it's very difficult for us to get it back. And that's lessons learned from other major programs that we've been talking to. We also can't lose control of our information. So it's all very well working in a digital environment and getting loads of data, but if we don't know what we're getting, where it's going, how we're going to get it, how it's controlled, then it's almost as bad as not having any information at all. So we need to be able to really tightly control what we've got, and we need to be able to trust in that information. And I think that's one of the big efficiencies that come from BIM, is being able to trust our information. So not reworking everything as it moves down the supply chain, not going through a revalidation or even a recollection of data, and surveying information is a real example of that. And then I mentioned people's behaviours. It all comes down to culture and the way people like to work. So we've got this devil depicting temptation of people moving off of the way that we're trying to implement BIM and moving on to the traditional ways of doing things. And I think this is particularly important when project managers, design managers are under immense pressure to hit their deadlines, and they will always try and revert to the way that they know how to do things, and they know the timescales associated with it. And it's just making sure that everyone understands the benefits of working with data, working with information, and working in this new way to give us this essentially an information model that we can then move over into our asset information management piece. So HS2 is quite big, so we have a number of challenges. Some of you might have seen at the suppliers conference last year that there was a statement where BIM was going to save us a minimum of £250 million on our capex costs. And essentially that's already been banked, so we've got a lot of work to do to make sure that we can actually meet that. And I don't think meeting it's a problem, evidencing it is another matter. So there's a big bit of work to do around that. There's a skills gap within industry, so we really need to make sure that everyone is on the same page, everyone understands what they're doing, and everyone can meet the requirements of not just us, but all of the other major projects that are going to be working in this way. I mentioned future-proofing, making sure that we can build up what we've got at the moment and make sure that it can be used in the future, making sure we're not backing ourselves into a corner now. So to try and understand the state of the industry and the level of maturity of our potential future supply chain, we commissioned an upskilling study which was released in October last year. And basically that, and we were helped by Mace with that. And in summary it was really positive. Everyone is saying that they're implementing BIM to a certain level, so there's an increasing understanding in what we're supposed to do. And even components that are slightly more obscure or have come later, like data exchange protocols, have made a financial provision for BIM, which is really good and have got a defined strategy. But some of the lower figures, which were a bit more concerning, well, only 43% of organisations had an education programme around upskilling rooms, leading, upskilling and future-proofing. Now, in terms of leading, we need to ensure that we as a client get some of the efficiency savings that the supply chain hopefully will be getting as part of this. So we want to make sure that we are implementing BIM right from the very top all the way down. We want to make sure that we've got really specific and good requirements in the contracts for us to be able to help the supply chain deliver what they think we need. And that's quite a challenge doing that very early on. So we need to have really robust contracts in place that prioritise data over digital paper or PDFs or whatever you want to call it. And we need to develop a line of sight all the way from the lowest tier of the supply chain right the way up to the top. And that might be HS2, it might be the DFT or the Treasury. But we need to make sure every bit of information that we're asking for serves a purpose. Otherwise there's no point in us paying for it. We need to get the most value out of our data so we can really drive decision making, and this is not just at a client level but through the supply chain as well, so using big data analytics and all of those kind of things that are prevalent in other industries but not so much in this industry. And we need to bring best practice in. It's generally considered that we as an industry are about 10 years behind other industries in this area. So how can we leverage the lessons learned from aerospace and manufacturing and automotive and bring those into how we operate and how we work digitally? And then through our contracts, but also just through the way that we behave, we need to promote collaborative culture and instill in people the ability to be comfortable working with the process that we're setting. and working with data, which is different. So in terms of upskilling, we need to be clear about our requirements, and we need to be clear about those early so that some organisation-specific upskilling can occur. And as I said, we'll be releasing some information about that in a couple of months' time. We did see a desire for accreditation from the BIM upskilling study, which is an interesting one because that's generally not what people want. But we're going to be working with government and accreditation bodies to see how we can put an industry standard accreditation in place for this. We also need to not concentrate on software, so we need to try and take software out of the upskilling piece and concentrate on processes. So what specific does HS2 need from a process perspective? And we need to make sure that our supply chain is upskilled in that. And in terms of future-proofing, as I mentioned, we need to stop thinking about software, but we need to take technology completely out of the equation. The only way to future-proof is to just think about information and data and getting the right structures in place, and we're spending a lot of time doing that at the moment. If we can be technology agnostic, then we'll stand the test of time and we'll be able to transition seamlessly. So all things about open data standards, working with Building Smart International to try and push all of these things forward. And really understand where the industry is heading, and all industries are heading, just so that we can make sure that we are not bleeding edge, but cutting edge of what we're talking about. So, just to close, I think we have massive opportunities as a project and as an industry and as a country really to drive the use of BIM, and we are seen as the forerunners internationally in terms of what we're trying to do, not as a project but as a country. And I think we as HS2 have got some work to do to ensure that we are ready and that we can exploit all those opportunities that we've just talked about. But I think as a potential supply chain, I think you've got some work to do and to make sure that everyone is ready, everyone is really willing to push the boundaries of what's possible, to really implement this in a way that we can all reap the benefits of more certain design, a safer design, more efficiency through the design and construction process, and then the further efficiencies and all of the big cost savings that come through operations and maintenance. And this is a really exciting project to be doing this on. I think it's big enough for us to be able to really push the boundaries and influence where industry is going with this. Thank you. I think that was more about us as a client. So if we are what we're trying to do is we're not trying to put any, impose anything on our supply chain. So we're not trying to say, we've selected this particular type of software, this vendor, therefore you will all have to go in and buy that, you all have to upskill your staff, train everyone in how to use that software. What we want to do, and it's a challenge, is try and say, do whatever you want to do, and we'll try and bring all that information together. So if we as a client can be technology agnostic, then it means that you don't have to be.